The stars disappeared first. Jiho noticed it at 3 in the morning while working his shift at the International Space Observatory outside Seoul. One moment, the constellation of Orion hung bright and clear in his monitors. The next moment, something blocked the light. Something massive. He rubbed his eyes and checked the instruments again. The readings made no sense. His hands shook as he adjusted the telescope's position. What he saw made his blood run cold. Ships, thousands of them. They stretched across space like a dark cloud, each one larger than any building on Earth. Jiho grabbed his phone and called his supervisor. Within minutes, every observatory on the planet confirmed what he saw. The alien fleet hung at the edge of the solar system just past Mars. They weren't hiding. They wanted to be seen. The news spread across Earth faster than wildfire. Television stations interrupted their programs. Social media exploded with panic and disbelief. In Seoul, people poured into the streets staring at the sky even though they couldn't see anything yet. In New York, London, Tokyo, and every major city, the same scene played out. Humanity had just learned they were not alone in the universe, and their new neighbors didn't look friendly. Admiral Minho sat in the emergency meeting of the United Earth Defense Council. Representatives from every nation crowded the room, their faces pale with fear. Minho was a career military officer, 53 years old, with gray hair and steady hands. He had trained for wars between nations, not wars with aliens. The alien message arrived exactly 12 hours after their fleet appeared. It came in every language on Earth simultaneously, broadcast on every frequency humans used. The voice was cold, mechanical, and absolute. People of Earth, we are the Velkari Empire. You will surrender your world within 72 hours. Resistance is pointless. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are toys. Submit, and you will be allowed to live as servants. Resist, and we will turn your planet to ash. You have been warned. The room erupted in chaos. Some delegates wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to fight. A few wanted to surrender immediately. Minho said nothing. He simply stared at the holographic display showing the alien fleet. 9,700 ships. Earth had maybe 6,000 spacecraft. Most of them outdated and designed for transport, not war. While politicians argued, a civilian engineer named Hyun worked in a small lab in Busan. He was 32 years old, thin with glasses that constantly slid down his nose. Hyun specialized in signal processing and had been analyzing the alien broadcast since it arrived. Most people heard the threat. Hyun heard something else. He noticed a pattern in the transmission frequencies. The aliens used rotating shield harmonics, probably to protect against different types of weapons. But the rotation followed a predictable cycle. It was small, maybe insignificant, but it was a weakness. Hyun called every military contact he had until someone finally listened. Captain Suji, commanding officer at Busan Naval Command, met him in person. She was 40 years old, tough as iron, with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Show me," she said. Hyun spread out his data on her desk. Their shields rotate every 7.3 seconds. For 0.4 seconds during each cycle, there's a gap in the electromagnetic spectrum. If we time our weapons perfectly, we could punch through. Suji studied the numbers. 0.4 seconds. That's not much time. It's better than nothing, Hyun replied. Suji picked up her phone and called Admiral Minho directly. 20 minutes later, Hyun's data was in front of the Defense Council. It wasn't much, but it was hope. The 72 hours felt like 72 years. Earth's military mobilized everything they had. Ships launched from secret bases on the moon and in asteroid belts. Old satellites were converted into weapons platforms. Every nation contributed what they could. For the first time in human history, every country on Earth worked together with a single purpose. Minho coordinated the defense from a bunker deep beneath Seoul. He had divided Earth's forces into 3 fleets: Pacific, Atlantic, and Reserve. Suji commanded the Pacific Fleet from her carrier, the Indomitable. It was Earth's newest warship, equipped with fusion drives and railguns. Against the Velkari, it might as well have been a rowboat facing a battleship. On the last day before the deadline, Minho recorded a message. It was broadcast to the Velkari fleet and to every human on Earth. To the Velkari Empire, you demand our surrender. You threaten our extinction. You call our weapons toys and our technology primitive. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps we cannot win this fight. But humanity has something you will never understand. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have rebuilt after wars that killed millions. We have climbed out of caves and reached for the stars. You are not the first enemy to think we would be easy to defeat. Every single one of them learned the same lesson. We are not prey. We are not servants. We are human, and we will fight for every inch of our world. Leave now, or discover why Earth has never been conquered. The response from the Velkari was immediate. Their fleet began moving toward Earth. Jiho watched from his observatory as the alien ships entered Earth's orbit. They moved in perfect formation, blotting out the sun in some places. 1,000 ships broke away from the main fleet and descended toward the atmosphere. The rest formed a blockade around the planet. In homes and shelters across Earth, people held each other and prayed. Parents hugged their children. Soldiers checked their weapons one last time. Everyone knew what was coming. Minho gave the order. All fleets launch. Show them what humanity can do. 6,000 human spacecraft lifted off from hidden positions. They looked like insects compared to the Velkari dreadnoughts, but those insects had teeth. Suji stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on her screens. Her crew was silent, tense, waiting for her command. She thought about her family back in Busan. She thought about the beaches where she played as a child. She thought about every person on Earth depending on her to buy them time. All ships, she said into the communication channel. Full speed ahead. Do not break formation. Do not retreat. Make every shot count. For Earth. The human fleet accelerated toward the Velkari ships. The aliens opened fire first. Beams of purple energy cut through space, turning human ships into expanding balls of flame. But the humans didn't stop. They didn't slow down. They charged forward like ancient warriors rushing into battle, screaming defiance at the sky. The first real battle between humanity and the Velkari Empire had begun. In 72 hours, one side would learn a lesson they would never forget. The other side would teach it to them no matter the cost. On Earth below in Seoul, Jiho looked up at the sky. He could see the flashes of weapons fire even from the ground. Each flash was a ship dying, a crew of humans or aliens meeting their end. He whispered a prayer for everyone up there. Then he went back to his instruments. If humanity survived this, they would need scientists to study what remained of the alien technology. If humanity survived this, the invasion of Earth had begun. The first human ship to die was the destroyer Dijon. It took 3 direct hits from Velkari energy weapons and broke apart in silence, scattering debris across the void. The second ship to die was the frigate Gwangju, then the carrier Jeju, then more and more, until the space around Earth looked like a graveyard of burning metal. But the humans didn't run. Captain Suji watched her tactical display as red icons blinked out one after another. Each icon was a ship full of people who would never go home. She felt the rage building in her chest, cold and focused like a laser. All ships adjust course. Follow my lead, she transmitted. Then she did something the Velkari had never seen before. She aimed her carrier directly at the center of the enemy formation and ordered full thrust. The Indomitable shot forward like a missile. Her crew grabbed their seats as the acceleration pushed them back. The Velkari ships ahead began firing everything they had at the charging carrier. Explosions rippled across the Indomitable's shields, but Suji didn't slow down. Weapons free. Fire everything, she ordered. Railguns, missiles, and energy weapons erupted from the Indomitable. The carrier plunged into the Velkari formation like a spear through paper. Behind her, the rest of the Pacific Fleet followed. Every ship firing, every captain screaming orders, every crew member fighting for their world. The Velkari had never experienced this kind of warfare. In every conquest, enemy ships retreated when damaged. They tried to preserve their forces. They fought with logic and calculation, but humans fought with something else. They fought with fury. Commander Daeho commanded the destroyer Mokpo on Suji's left flank. His ship took a direct hit that tore through the engine room, killing half his crew instantly. Warning lights flashed across his bridge. His second officer shouted that they needed to retreat. No, Daeho said quietly. He looked at the Velkari flagship ahead, massive and arrogant. We're not done yet. He redirected all remaining power to the engines and turned the Mokpo toward the flagship. His crew realized what he was planning. Some protested. Most simply strapped in and held on. The Mokpo accelerated, trailing fire and debris. Velkari weapons hammered the destroyer, but Daeho kept flying. At the last second, he triggered the ship's fusion reactor to overload. The Mokpo crashed into the Velkari flagship's bridge section. The fusion reactor detonated, releasing the power of a small sun. The flagship broke in half. its crew dead before they knew what happened. Commander Diho and his entire crew died in that explosion. But they took 800 Velkari soldiers and one of their most powerful warships with them. On Earth, the Velkari shock troops landed in 12 cities simultaneously. Seoul was one of them. Lieutenant Yoonji commanded a mechanized infantry unit stationed in the city's northern district. She was 28 years old, compact and strong, with scars on her hands from years of training. The Velkari landing craft came down like meteors, crushing buildings under their weight. The hatches opened and the aliens emerged. They stood 3 meters tall, covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. They carried weapons that hummed with power. Yoonji's unit opened fire from defensive positions in the ruined buildings. Bullets and rockets hit the Velkari soldiers, but their armor held. The aliens returned fire with energy weapons that melted concrete and turned humans to ash. "Fall back to secondary positions," Yoonji ordered. Her unit retreated through the rubble-filled streets. The Velkari followed, confident and methodical. But Yoonji had learned something important in her years of training. You don't fight a stronger enemy head-on. You make them pay for every step forward. You turn their strengths into weaknesses. The secondary position was an apartment complex that Yoonji's engineers had rigged with explosives. She waited until the Velkari troops entered the building's ground floor. Then she detonated the charges. The entire structure collapsed, burying dozens of aliens under tons of concrete and steel. The Velkari were strong and their armor was tough, but they couldn't survive a building falling on them. Yoonji smiled grimly as she heard the aliens screaming in their strange language. "Welcome to Earth," she whispered. In orbit, the battle raged on. The Velkari had superior numbers and technology, but humans had desperation and creativity. When missiles ran out, human pilots used their ships as weapons, ramming into Velkari hulls. When weapons failed, engineers rerouted power in ways that would make the designers scream, overloading systems to get one more shot. Admiral Minho watched the battle from his command bunker. The casualty reports made him want to vomit. Earth had lost 300 ships in the first hour, but the Velkari first wave had lost over 700. The aliens expected an easy victory. Instead, they found a meat grinder. "Admiral, we're getting reports from all the landing zones," his aide said. "The Velkari are advancing, but slower than expected. Our ground forces are making them fight for every block." Minho nodded. "Tell all units to keep fighting. Make the aliens bleed for every meter of Earth they take." On the Velkari command ship, Admiral Thexral watched his tactical displays with growing confusion. The humans should have broken by now. They should have surrendered after seeing the power of the Velkari fleet. Instead, they fought harder. They threw themselves at his ships like wild animals. One of his officers approached nervously. "Admiral, the first wave has taken severe casualties. Should we send reinforcements?" Thexral's mandibles clicked in frustration. His intelligence reports said Earth would fall in 3 days. They had been fighting for 6 hours and his fleet had lost nearly 800 ships. "Send 3,000 more ships. Crush them." Back in Busan, Hyun worked frantically in his lab. He had samples of Velkari shield technology from destroyed alien ships. He studied the wreckage, took measurements, ran simulations. Captain Suji had bought him time with her crazy attack. He couldn't waste it. A pattern emerged. The Velkari shields were incredibly strong, but they were designed to face logical enemies who attacked in predictable patterns. The random, chaotic nature of human attacks confused the alien defensive systems. Their shields kept adjusting for tactics that made sense, leaving gaps against tactics that didn't. Hyun called Suji, who was back in Earth orbit after her fleet's first engagement. "Captain, I have something. If we randomize our attack patterns, fire at irregular intervals, and vary our approach angles constantly, we can get through their shields more often." Suji was exhausted, covered in sweat and soot from a fire on her bridge, but she listened carefully. "You want us to fight with chaos instead of discipline?" "Organized chaos," Hyun corrected. "Controlled randomness. Make every attack unpredictable." Suji laughed, a harsh sound. "We've been doing that anyway because we're desperate. Now you're telling me it's actually a strategy?" "It's the only strategy that works against them." Suji transmitted Hyun's findings to the entire human fleet. Within an hour, Earth's forces changed their tactics. Ships stopped attacking in formation. They came at random angles, at random times, with random weapons. It looked like madness, but Velkari ships started dying faster. In Seoul, Yoonji's unit had fallen back to the subway system. The underground tunnels had become a maze of ambush points and death traps. The Velkari followed them down, confident they could hunt the humans anywhere. They were wrong. In the dark tunnels, human soldiers used guerrilla tactics perfected over centuries of warfare. They struck from shadows and vanished. They poisoned water supplies the aliens tried to use. They collapsed tunnels behind them, burying Velkari troops alive. Yunji led a squad of 20 soldiers against a Velkari platoon of 50. She didn't try to fight them directly. Instead, she led them into a flooded section of the subway. The water came up to a human's waist. For the taller Velkari, it barely reached their knees. But Yunji had electrified the water. The Velkari troops died screaming as electricity coursed through the water and into their armor. Their technology was advanced, but they had never fought an enemy willing to use their own city as a weapon. After 6 hours of fighting, the first battle ended. Both sides pulled back to regroup. Earth had lost 300 ships and suffered 40,000 casualties on the ground. But the Velkari first wave was shattered. Only 217 of their original 1,000 ships survived. In his bunker, Admiral Minho reviewed the reports. The numbers were terrible, but they told an important story. Humans could fight the Velkari. They could hurt them, maybe they couldn't win, but they could make the aliens pay such a high price that victory became hollow. He sent a message to all Earth forces. First blood goes to humanity. We've shown the Velkari that Earth will not be an easy meal. Rest, repair, and prepare. They'll come again and we'll be ready. In orbit, the Velkari fleet regrouped. 3,000 more ships moved forward to join the attack. The next wave would be bigger, harder, more brutal. But now the Velkari knew something they hadn't known before. Humans were dangerous. Humans were willing to die to protect their world. And humans had teeth. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began. Earth's skies burned day and night. Cities that once held millions now stood as empty ruins. But humanity still fought. Scientist Yuna worked in the Geneva Research Complex, buried 300 meters underground. She was 41 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. Her lab was filled with wreckage from destroyed Velkari ships. She had made a discovery that could change everything. Their tactical AI is too smart, she explained to Admiral Minho over a secure video link. It predicts optimal attack patterns and responds perfectly. But when we attack randomly, chaotically, it breaks down trying to analyze patterns that don't exist. Minho leaned forward. You're saying we win by being unpredictable? Not just unpredictable. Organized chaos. We need to look insane but maintain strategic objectives. Confuse their computers while achieving our goals. Minho smiled for the first time in weeks. Send me the full tactical doctrine. I'll make sure every captain gets it. Yuna's research spread through Earth's military like wildfire. Captains started combining traditional tactics with random elements. A fleet would attack in formation, then suddenly break apart and reform from completely different angles. Missiles would be fired in patterns that made no mathematical sense, but somehow hit their targets. The Velkari tactical systems, designed for logical warfare against rational opponents, struggled to respond. Their ships hesitated at critical moments, trying to calculate responses to attacks that defied calculation. Meanwhile, Engineer Hyun worked on something massive. Admiral Minho had approved his crazy plan with one simple question. Will it hurt them? When Hyun said yes, Minho gave him unlimited resources. Hyun's idea was simple but insane. The asteroid belt contained thousands of rocks, each one a potential kinetic weapon. If he could attach fusion drives to enough asteroids and aim them at the Velkari fleet, he could create a storm of deadly projectiles. The problem was time. Attaching drives to 14,000 asteroids required automation and luck. Hyun designed small drone units that could find asteroids, clamp onto them, and install the drives. He launched 10,000 drones into the belt and prayed they would work. On Earth, the ground war evolved into something the Velkari had never experienced. They controlled the cities during the day, but at night, humans emerged from hiding to reclaim the streets. Major Taehyung, a special forces officer with 20 years of experience, coordinated global resistance cells. He was 39 years old, built like a tank, with a voice that made soldiers snap to attention. But his greatest weapon wasn't physical strength. It was his ability to think like a guerrilla fighter. The Velkari expect armies, he told his cell leaders during encrypted video conferences. Give them ghosts instead. Following his guidance, resistance fighters poisoned food supplies the aliens tried to harvest. They sabotaged Valkyrie equipment with magnetic charges that destroyed electronics. They set up ambushes in places the aliens thought were safe, then vanished before reinforcements arrived. In Tokyo, a resistance cell led by a fighter named Quan collapsed a highway overpass onto a Valkyrie convoy. In New York, fighters flooded subway tunnels where aliens had established a base. In Cairo, humans lured a Valkyrie patrol into a minefield disguised as rubble. The aliens started losing soldiers not to battle, but to constant harassment. They had to garrison troops on Earth to hold territory, which meant fewer ships in space. Every soldier guarding a city was a soldier not fighting the human. Fleet Lieutenant Yunji had become something of a legend in Seoul. Her unit had survived 3 weeks of constant combat through cunning and ruthlessness. She had learned to read the Valkyrie tactics, to predict where they would attack and how they would respond. One night, she led a raid on a Valkyrie supply depot. Her team of 15 soldiers moved through the ruins like shadows. They reached the depot's perimeter, where Valkyrie guards stood watch with their advanced sensors. Yunji had learned those sensors had a weakness. They were calibrated for movement and heat signatures, but they didn't respond well to extreme cold. Her team had covered themselves in thermal blankets soaked in liquid nitrogen. To the Valkyrie sensors, they were just cold rubble. The guards didn't see them until it was too late. Yunji's team struck fast and silent, using captured Valkyrie weapons. They planted explosives throughout the depot and retreated before the alarm sounded. The explosion destroyed a month's worth of supplies and killed 300 Valkyrie soldiers. Yunji watched from a safe distance as orange flames lit up the night sky. "That's for Daeho," she whispered, thinking of the commander who sacrificed his ship in the first battle. In orbit, the war continued without mercy. Captain Suji, now promoted to Commodore, commanded what remained of the Pacific Fleet. She had lost 60% of her ships, but the survivors were veteran crews who had learned to fight the Valkyrie effectively. She planned a special operation. Intelligence suggested the Valkyrie command ship held their strategic database. If she could capture it, Earth would know everything about Valkyrie tactics, technology, and weaknesses. It was suicide mission, but Suji volunteered without hesitation. She handpicked a boarding team of 20 Korean Special Forces soldiers, including Yunji, who had been pulled from Seoul specifically for this operation. They approached the Valkyrie command ship in a captured alien shuttle. The Valkyrie didn't recognize it as a threat until it was too late. The shuttle crashed through the hangar bay shields and hard-landed inside the enemy vessel. Suji and her team emerged, shooting. The hangar erupted in chaos as Valkyrie soldiers scrambled to respond. The human team fought their way through corridors designed for beings twice their size, using the tight spaces to their advantage. Yunji moved like death incarnate, her training and weeks of combat experience guiding every movement. She cleared rooms with ruthless efficiency, never stopping, never hesitating. They lost 4 soldiers in the first hallway, 6 more in the reactor section. By the time they reached the command center, only 8 humans remained alive, including Suji and Yunji. The Valkyrie command center was protected by 50 elite guards. The humans were exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition. Logic said they should retreat. Suji didn't believe in retreat. Grenades first, then rush. Don't stop moving. They threw every explosive they had through the door, then charged into the smoke and chaos. The battle lasted 3 minutes. When it ended, all 50 Valkyrie guards were dead. So were 6 more human soldiers. Only Suji and Yunji survived. Both were bleeding from multiple wounds. Yunji's left arm hung useless at her side. Suji had burns across her face from an energy weapon that nearly killed her. But they had the database. Suji downloaded everything to a secure drive while Yunji guarded the door. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. More Valkyrie troops were coming. "We're not getting out of here," Yunji said calmly. "I know," Suji replied. She finished the download and activated her emergency beacon. But the data will. A human stealth ship waiting in position detected the beacon. It fired a teleport beam, a prototype technology that barely worked. The beam locked onto Suji's secure drive and yanked it through space. Seconds later, Valkyrie troops stormed the command center. They found Suji and Yunji standing back to back, weapons empty, bleeding but defiant. The Valkyrie commander approached them, his translator device speaking in Korean. "You are defeated. Your mission failed," Suji smiled through bloody teeth. Check your database, the commander turned to his console. His expression changed when he saw what happened. The entire strategic database had been copied and transmitted to Earth. Impossible, he breathed. Welcome to Earth, Suji said. Then she triggered the explosive charge on her belt. The command center vanished in fire. Commodore Suji and Lieutenant Yunji died together, taking the Velkari commander and 40 soldiers with them. But their sacrifice wasn't in vain. The database reached Earth safely. Yuna and her team analyzed it immediately. What they found was both terrifying and encouraging. The Velkari Empire had conquered 9 civilizations before Earth. Each conquest took less than 3 days. The longest resistance had lasted 48 hours. Humanity had survived 3 weeks and was still fighting. More importantly, the database showed the Velkari battle doctrine. They relied on overwhelming force and technological superiority. They had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything. They had never fought an enemy that used chaos as a weapon. Admiral Minho studied the intelligence with grim satisfaction. They're afraid of death. That's their weakness. They retreat when losses get too high. We can use that, Yuna agreed. If we make the cost high enough, they'll break. But the Velkari weren't done. Admiral Thexrel, enraged by the theft of his database, committed his remaining forces to one massive assault. 4,300 ships moved into attack formation around Earth. Hyun watched from his underground command center as the Velkari fleet prepared to annihilate the planet. His asteroid weapons weren't ready yet. He needed 30 more days. Earth didn't have 30 days. The final battle was coming and humanity had to be ready. Minho addressed all remaining Earth forces. This is it. They're coming with everything they have. We've shown them that humans don't surrender. Now we show them that humans don't break. Every ship, every soldier, every citizen. The Velkari fleet filled Earth's orbit like a swarm of locusts. 4,300 warships, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. They arranged themselves in perfect formation, surrounding the planet completely. There would be no escape. Admiral Thexeral had learned to hate humans. In 30 years of military service, he had never encountered an enemy this stubborn, this reckless, this willing to die. The stolen database embarrassed him in front of high command. This time he would show no mercy. Begin planetary bombardment, he ordered. Turn their cities to glass. The Velkari fleet opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams rained down from orbit, striking every major city on Earth. Buildings vaporized. Streets melted. The temperature in some areas rose to levels that could boil water instantly. Seoul burned. Tokyo burned. New York, London, Moscow, Cairo, Sydney. Every city humanity had built over thousands of years turned into infernos. 40 million people died in the first hour of bombardment. In his bunker beneath Seoul, Admiral Minho watched the casualty reports roll in. Each number was a person. Each person was someone's child, parent, or friend. He felt the weight of every death crushing his chest. Admiral, orbital defense platforms are destroyed, his aide reported. All satellite networks are down. We've lost contact with most ground units. Minho nodded slowly. Earth's defenses had been shattered. The Velkari controlled the sky completely, but the war wasn't over. Not yet. Order all remaining forces underground. Activate Protocol Sanctuary. Across Earth, human forces retreated into bunkers, caves, subway systems, and mines. The surface belonged to the Velkari now, but underneath, humanity prepared to continue fighting. Scientist Yuna relocated her lab to an old subway station beneath Geneva. Water leaked from cracks in the ceiling. The air smelled of mold and fear, but her equipment still worked, and that was all that mattered. She had converted the subway tunnels into a network of workshops. Engineers built weapons from scavenged Velkari technology. Medics treated wounded soldiers with supplies running dangerously low. Civilians huddled in corners trying to stay warm and sane. Yuna worked on adapting Velkari shield technology for human use. If they could reverse engineer the alien defenses, Earth's remaining ships would have a better chance of survival. She hadn't slept in 40 hours, surviving on coffee and determination. A young assistant approached her. Dr. Yuna, we're running out of power cells. The reactors can't keep up with demand. Reduce life support in non-essential sections, she replied without looking up from her work. We need power for weapons more than comfort. The assistant hesitated. People will freeze in those sections. Then they die warm by keeping weapons operational, or they die cold when the Velkari find us. Choose. It was a harsh answer, but these were harsh times. Survival required brutal choices. In the tunnels beneath Seoul, Major Taehyung organized the resistance. He had created a network of fighters that stretched across the entire planet. They communicated through old radio systems the Valkyrie couldn't easily detect. They moved through underground passages the aliens didn't know existed. Commander Junho, a Marine officer who had been fighting without seeing sunlight for 6 weeks, led one of Taehyung's units. He was 33 years old with a thick beard and eyes that had seen too much death. His unit specialized in sabotage. They emerged at night through hidden exits, planted explosives near Valkyrie positions, and vanished before anyone knew they were there. Junho had lost count of how many aliens his team had killed. He stopped thinking about it. Numbers didn't matter anymore. Only the mission mattered. One night, Junho led a raid on a Valkyrie garrison in what used to be downtown Seoul. 50 Marines against 300 aliens. The odds were impossible, but Junho had stopped caring about odds. They attacked during a shift change when the garrison was most vulnerable. Humans poured from subway entrances, firing captured Valkyrie weapons and throwing homemade explosives. The aliens scrambled to respond, but the attack was too fast, too chaotic. Junho's team destroyed the garrison's power core and killed over 100 Valkyrie before retreating underground. They lost 23 Marines in the attack. Junho led the survivors back through the dark tunnels, their faces blank with exhaustion. Back in space, Engineer Hyun monitored his asteroid project from a makeshift command center deep inside a lunar mine. He had succeeded in attaching drives to 14,000 asteroids. Now came the hard part, timing their arrival to hit the Valkyrie fleet. His calculations had to be perfect. If the asteroids arrived too early or too late, the Valkyrie would simply dodge them, but if timed correctly, the asteroids would hit during the aliens' next major attack wave, when their formation was tight and movement limited. Hyun's fingers flew across his keyboard. His eyes burned from staring at screens. His stomach churned with stress and too much caffeine. But the math worked. In 72 hours, 14,000 asteroids would reach Earth orbit traveling at devastating speeds. He sent a message to Admiral Minho. Project Hammer ready. Activation window in 3 days. Minho read the message and felt a spark of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. He began planning a coordinated counterattack to coincide with the asteroid strike. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened in the Valkyrie fleet. Soldiers started questioning the invasion. They had expected an easy conquest. Instead, they faced an enemy that refused to die, that turned their own cities into weapons that smiled while bleeding. Young Valkyrie warriors spoke quietly in their barracks. Why are we still here? We've lost thousands of ships. The humans will never surrender. High Command says we cannot show weakness. But at what cost? How many more of us must die for this one primitive world? These conversations reached Admiral Thexerel. He executed 3 soldiers for defeatism and doubled down on his assault. But doubt had taken root. His own officers questioned orders. His soldiers hesitated in combat. The humans had done something the Valkyrie had never experienced. They had broken the enemy's confidence. Deep in Earth's underground networks, something beautiful happened. People who had been enemies for generations worked together. Korean soldiers fought alongside Japanese civilians. American engineers collaborated with Russian scientists. Religious differences, political disagreements, old hatreds, all of it disappeared in the face of extinction. A broadcast went viral through Earth's underground networks. Someone had found footage of a family in Busan. A father, mother, and 2 young children sitting in their shelter, sharing a simple meal. They had nothing. Their city was destroyed. They didn't know if they would survive the night, but they were smiling. The father looked at the camera and said simply, "We're still here. They can destroy our buildings. They can kill our bodies, but they cannot kill the human spirit. We're still here, and we'll always be here." The video spread through every tunnel, every bunker, every hiding place. Soldiers watched it before going on missions. Scientists watched it while working. Civilians watched it while trying to sleep. Something changed. Morale didn't just hold, it increased. Humans stopped fighting because they had to. They started fighting because they wanted to. Because being human meant refusing to give up, even when defeat seemed certain. In the Valkyrie fleet, Admiral Thexerel noticed the change too. His ground forces reported that human resistance was intensifying, not weakening. His officers told him that humans were fighting harder now than they did at the start of the war. It made no sense. The humans were losing. Their cities were destroyed. Their casualties were massive. They should be broken. What drives them? Thexral asked his senior tactical officer. We don't know, sir. Their psychology is different from any species we've encountered. Pain and loss seem to make them stronger, not weaker. Thexral stared at Earth on his view screen. The planet was scarred and burning, but still defiant. He had committed everything to this conquest. If he failed, the Empire would strip him of rank and exile him in disgrace. Prepare for final assault, he ordered. We will crush them once and for all. But Thexral felt something he had never felt before in his career. Doubt. Deep in his mind, a small voice asked, can they be crushed? Or will they fight until every human is dead? On Earth's moon, Hyun made final preparations for Project Hammer. He calculated trajectories, double-checked every drive, ran simulations until his eyes couldn't focus anymore. Everything had to be perfect. He thought about his family in Busan. He didn't know if they were alive. Communications had been cut for weeks. All he could do was hope and fight. This is for you, he whispered to the empty room. For everyone on Earth, for humanity. He entered the activation sequence. Across the asteroid belt, 14,000 rocks began accelerating toward Earth. Each one was a kinetic weapon powerful enough to destroy a warship. Together they formed a storm that would either save Earth or accomplish nothing. Admiral Minho received confirmation that Project Hammer was active. He gathered his remaining commanders for a final briefing. In 72 hours, those asteroids will arrive. When they do, every ship we have left will launch. Every soldier will attack. Every resistance cell will strike simultaneously. This is our last chance. We either break the Velkari now or we die trying. His commanders nodded grimly. They had all accepted death weeks ago. Now they just wanted to make it count. The asteroids arrived like the fist of an angry god. 14,000 rocks, each one moving at thousands of kilometers per second, screamed into Earth's orbit. The Velkari sensors detected them too late. By the time Admiral Thexral understood what was happening, the first impacts had already begun. Engineer Hyun had timed it perfectly. The Velkari fleet was in tight formation, preparing for their final assault on Earth. They couldn't scatter quickly enough. The asteroids tore through their formation like bullets through cloth. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. One asteroid punched through a Velkari dreadnought's hull and came out the other side, continuing on to hit another ship behind it. Another rock struck a carrier's reactor, causing a chain reaction that destroyed 3 nearby vessels. The beautiful, orderly Velkari formation dissolved into chaos. Ships tried to dodge, but there were too many asteroids coming from too many directions. Captains screamed orders. Tactical systems overloaded trying to calculate escape routes. In 10 minutes, 900 Velkari ships were destroyed or disabled. The moment the asteroids hit, Admiral Minho gave the order. All forces attack now. From hidden bases on Earth's moon, from asteroid positions, from underground bunkers, every remaining human spacecraft launched simultaneously. 600 ships, battered and repaired dozens of times, charged toward the scattered Velkari fleet. Leading them was a new flagship. It wasn't the biggest ship or the most advanced. It was a converted cargo hauler named Remembrance, equipped with weapons salvaged from destroyed vessels. On its bridge stood a new commander, a young captain named Isol who had survived 3 ship destructions and refused to give up. All ships, remember Commodore Suji's words, Isol transmitted. Make every shot count. For Earth, the human fleet hit the Velkari formation like a hammer striking glass. They used every tactic they had learned over 4 months of brutal warfare. Random attack patterns, suicide runs, overloaded weapons fired beyond safety limits. Ships ramming when ammunition ran out, but this time was different. The humans weren't just fighting desperately. They were fighting with purpose, with coordination, with the knowledge that this was their last chance. On Earth, Major Tai Hyung launched his final offensive. Every resistance cell, every underground fighter, every hidden unit attacked simultaneously. They emerged from tunnels beneath Velkari positions and struck with everything they had. Commander Yunhyo led his Marines in an assault on a major Velkari command post in Seoul. They came up through the subway system, catching the aliens completely by surprise. The battle was vicious and close quarters. Yunho killed 7 Velkari soldiers personally before an energy blast caught him in the chest. He fell, bleeding heavily. His Marines dragged him to cover while continuing to fight. Yunho looked up at the sky through a hole in the ceiling. He could see the flashes of weapons fire in orbit. Human ships fighting Velkari vessels. He smiled through bloody teeth. "We're still here," he whispered. Then he died. His Marines, enraged by their commander's death, fought with renewed fury. They overran the command post and destroyed it completely. Across Earth, similar scenes played out in hundreds of locations. Humans striking, dying, but always taking Velkari soldiers with them. In his flagship, Admiral Thexral watched his fleet disintegrate. The asteroids had been unexpected. The coordinated human assault was overwhelming. But what truly broke him was something else. His soldiers were retreating without orders. Velkari ships that could still move began jumping to hyperspace, abandoning the battle. Ground troops refused to leave their fortified positions. Officers stopped responding to his commands. The fleet wasn't defeated. It was breaking psychologically. Thexral realized the truth. The Velkari Empire had conquered 9 civilizations, but they had never fought anyone like humans. Every other species surrendered when the cost became too high. Humans simply raised the cost higher and kept fighting. "All ships retreat," he finally ordered, his voice hollow. "We're leaving." But Earth wasn't done with them. Captain Isol saw the Velkari fleet beginning to scatter. "All ships pursue! Don't let them escape." The human fleet chased after the retreating aliens like wolves hunting fleeing prey. Isol's remembrance caught a Velkari cruiser trying to activate its hyperdrive. She fired every weapon she had, punching through its engines. The cruiser exploded, scattering debris across space. "Target the next one," she shouted. Across the battlefield, human ships harried the retreating Velkari. They had waited months for this moment, suffered millions of casualties, watched their world burn. They weren't going to let the aliens leave easily. In the asteroid belt, Hyun monitored the battle from his lunar command center. Tears ran down his face as he watched human ships chase the Velkari fleet. He had succeeded. His crazy plan had worked. He sent one last transmission to the fleeing aliens. "Remember Earth. Remember what happens when you attack humanity." Admiral Thexral's fleet jumped to hyperspace system by system, leaving behind destroyed ships and shattered pride. Of the 9,700 warships that had arrived at Earth, only 17 escaped. The rest were debris scattered across human space. The last Velkari ship jumped away, and suddenly Earth's orbit was silent. The battle was over. On the Remembrance, Captain Isol stood at her viewport and stared at Earth. The planet was scarred, burning in places, wrapped in smoke and debris. But it was still there, still turning, still alive. "We won," her first officer said quietly. Isol shook her head. "We survived." There's a difference. Around Earth, in space, and on the ground, humans slowly realized what had happened. The Velkari were gone. The invasion was over. After 4 months of hell, humanity had endured. In Geneva's underground tunnels, scientist Yuna collapsed over her workstation, finally allowing herself to sleep. In Seoul's subway system, resistance fighters emerged cautiously into the ruined streets. On Earth's moon, engineer Hyun sat down and cried. Admiral Minho stood in his bunker beneath Seoul and listened to the casualty reports. 412 million dead, 70 major cities destroyed or heavily damaged. 3 continents had radiation levels that would take decades to clean up. But Earth still stood. Humanity still lived. He activated the global broadcast system. Every surviving communication device on Earth and in space received his message. "People of Earth, the Velkari have retreated. We have survived. The cost was terrible. We lost millions of our brothers and sisters. We lost friends, family, and loved ones. Our world is damaged. Our cities are ruins. But we are still here." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "For all of human history, we have been divided. Nation fought nation. Religion fought religion. We killed each other over resources, ideology, and pride. It took an alien invasion to show us the truth. We are one species, one world, one humanity. We cannot forget this lesson. We must never forget what we accomplished when we stood together." Around Earth, in bunkers and tunnels and makeshift shelters, people listened. Some cried. Some cheered. Most just sat in exhausted silence. Astronomer Jiho, still alive in his underground observatory, watched the Velkari ships disappear from his sensors. He had been the first human to see the alien fleet arrive. Now he watched them leave broken and defeated. He thought about all the people who had died, Commodore Suji, who sacrificed herself to steal the alien database, Lieutenant Unji, who died alongside her, Commander Deho, who turned his ship into a weapon, Commander Junho, who fought until his last breath, millions of civilians who never wanted to be soldiers but fought anyway. "We remember you," Jiho whispered. "All of you. Forever." In the weeks that followed, Earth began to rebuild. It would take years, maybe decades, to repair all the damage. But humans had time now. Time to heal, time to grow, time to prepare for whatever came next. The Velkari Empire received Admiral Thexral's report. The High Council debated for 3 days. Finally, they issued a decree that shocked the entire empire. Earth was quarantined. No Velkari ship would ever approach the human homeworld again. The cost was simply too high, but the decree went further. The Velkari sent a message to every species in the galaxy. It was simple and clear. Do not attack Earth, the humans are dangerous. They fight without reason, without fear, without hope of victory. They will die to defend their world, and they will take you with them. The message spread across the galaxy. Some species laughed at the warning. Some took it seriously. All of them heard the same story. 9,700 Velkari warships invaded Earth. Only 17 returned. On Earth, humanity looked to the stars with new eyes. They had been invaded. They had been nearly destroyed. But they had survived. Now they would make sure it never happened again. Admiral Minho became the first leader of the United Earth Defense Force. Engineer Hyun began designing humanity's first true warships, built from the ground up for combat. Scientist Yuna led the effort to reverse engineer Velkari technology. Captain Isal took command of Earth's first dreadnought, completed 2 years after the invasion. It was massive, powerful, bristling with weapons that combined human creativity with alien technology. She named it Defiance. At the naming ceremony, she gave a speech that was broadcast across Earth and to the colonies humanity had begun establishing on Mars and the Moon. The Velkari came to conquer us. They learned a lesson instead. Humans are not prey. We are not servants.